It was the 9th of December, a cold that bit your skin and made your breath turn into little clouds in the air. My mom had been fine that morning, laughing and making breakfast like she always did, but by nightfall she was sick. So sick that she couldn't even sit up. Her face was pale and her breathing was shallow. My dad was far away in another country for work, so it was just me, my little brother, and my mom in the house. When my mom got worse, we called an ambulance. The sirens wailed like ghosts in the night, piercing the silence of our quiet neighborhood. The paramedics rushed in their faces, serious, and took my mom and my brother to the hospital. I was left alone in the house, just me and the silence. The house felt different that night. It wasn't just quiet, it was too quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. I tried to distract myself by turning on the TV. The glow from the screen was the only light in the room, casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. I sat on the couch, hugging my knees, trying to ignore the unease, creeping up my spine. Then something strange happened. The TV remote, which I had placed carefully on the couch beside me, suddenly fell to the floor. It wasn't a big deal at first. I thought maybe I'd knocked it off without realizing. I picked it up and put it back on the couch, making sure it was secure. But a few minutes later, it happened again. The remote slid off the couch and hit the floor with a loud clack. My heart skipped a beat. I stared at it, confused. There was no wind inside the house, no open windows nearby. How could it have fallen again? Then it happened a third time. This time, the remote didn't just fall. It flew like someone had swiped it off the couch with force. My breath caught in my throat. My hands started to tremble, and my heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my ears. I looked around the room, but there was no one there, just me and the shadows. I couldn't stay in the living room any longer. I bolted to my bedroom, slamming the door shut behind me. I jumped into bed and pulled the blanket over my head, trying to block out the world. But even under the blanket, I couldn't escape the feeling that something was wrong. The house felt alive, like it was watching me, waiting for me to let my guard down. The silence was unbearable. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind outside made my skin crawl. I heard whispers, soft, faint whispers that seemed to come from all around me. They were too quiet to make out, but I could swear they were saying my name. Not in a friendly way, but in a way that made my blood run cold. I peeked out from under the blanket, my eyes darting around the room. The shadows in the corners seemed to move on their own, shifting and twisting like they had a life of their own. I blinked, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination, but the shadows didn't stop. They grew darker, thicker, like they were closing in on me. Then I felt it, a cold touch on my arm. It was like icy fingers brushing against my skin, sending a shiver down my spine. I yanked my arm back, but there was nothing there, just the empty air. My breath came in, short, panicked gasps, and I could feel sweat dripping down my face despite the cold. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They weren't just saying my name anymore. They were laughing, a low, guttural laugh that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. At the same time, I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for it to stop. But the laughter only grew louder, more menacing. I don't know how long I stayed like that, frozen in fear under my blanket. It felt like hours. Eventually, the whispers faded and the laughter stopped. The house fell silent again, but the silence was worse. Now it felt heavy, oppressive, like the house was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. When my dad finally came home the next day, I told him everything. He didn't believe me at first, but after a few nights in the house, he started to notice things too strange. Noises, cold spots, shadows that moved when no one was there. We moved out of that house soon after, leaving everything behind. We never went back. Even now, years later, I can't forget that night. The way the remote flew off the couch, the whispers, the laughter, the shadows that seemed to reach for me. I don't know what was in that house, but I know it wasn't human, and I know it wasn't friendly sometimes. When I'm alone in the dark, I still hear those whispers, and I wonder if whatever was in that house followed me, or if it's still there, waiting for someone else to move in. That house wasn't just a house, it was something else, something alive, and I'll never forget the night it showed me its true fate.